Hello students, in today's class we are going to study about Fajan's rule. In this video we are going to discuss about basic introduction in bonding, covalent character in ionic compound, and some terminologies like polarizing power, polarisability, and polarization. So we know that we have two types of chemical bonding, right? Covalent bonding and ionic bonding. We have two types of chemical bonding, covalent bonding and ionic bonding. Covalent bonding involves sharing of electrons, and ionic bonding involves transfer of electrons. Whether it is ionic bond or covalent bond, these two terms are actually relative. Relative terms. Why I am saying like this? Because we will not find any compound which is purely covalent, and we will not find any compound which is purely ionic. So that means that there is a presence of certain covalent characteristics in ionic compound or vice versa, right? So this rule, Fajan's rule, will help us to predict the covalent character present in ionic compound. Now, if we have an ionic compound, let's say we have an ionic compound, and we know that in the ionic compound we will have a cation and we will have an anion. The cation has the smaller size than the anion. This is because the ionic radius of the cation is smaller than the ionic radius of the anion, as the anion has more electrons compared to the cation. Now, when an anion comes nearby to a cation, what happens is that the electron cloud of the anion gets distorted towards the cation. This is because the cation has the tendency to pull the electron clouds of the anion towards itself. So the symmetrical shape of the anion gets distorted towards the cation, and it becomes elongated in shapes like this. Now at this particular point we can say that the anion becomes polarized. Anion is polarized. Now what is exactly happening here between this cation and anion? To understand it, we need to understand first two terms. One is polarizing power and the other one is polarisability. Polarizing power means the tendency of the cation to pull the electron clouds towards itself. So it is the extent to which a cation can polarize. It is the extent to which a cation can polarize an anion. And polarisability is the tendency of the anion to get distorted or polarized by a cation. Okay, now because of these two terms, polarizing power and polarisability, we will have polarizations in ionic compound. So what does this polarization means? Polarization means the distortion of spherically symmetric electron cloud to an unsymmetric cloud. And due to polarizations, sharing of electrons occurs between two ions. And due to polarization, sharing of electrons occurs between two ions to some extent and the bond shows covalent character, and the ionic bond shows covalent character. Okay, so whenever a cation comes nearby to an anion, this is the anion, they both are forming an ionic bond. Then what happens is that due to the tendency of the cation to pull the electron clouds of the anion toward itself, the spherically symmetrical shape of the anion gets distorted towards the cation. So because of that, we will have polarizations, and due to polarization, the sharing of electrons occurs between the two ions to some extent, and the bond shows, the ionic bond shows covalent character. Okay, now how to know about up to what extent this sharing of electrons occurring between the two ions? The extent of polarization, to know about the extent of polarizations that is taking place between these ions in any ionic compound, we have to know about certain set of rules. Those rules are known as Fajan's rule. So the extent of polarization is governed by Fajan's rule. Is governed by Fajan's rule. Now this Fajan rule depends upon four important factors. The four important factors are size of the cation, then charge on cation, then the size of an ion, and the last one, which is very important, is electronic configuration of the cation. So these four factors will decide up to what extent the polarization is taking place in any ionic compound. And with the help of these important factors, four important factors, we will say that the ionic compound has the covalent characters or not. Now in today's class, we have learned that covalent bonds are not purely covalent, and ionic bonds are also not purely ionic. We will also learn about the polarizing power of the cation and polarisability of the anion. And because of the polarisability and polarizing power, we see that we have polarizations in ionic compound. And because of that polarizations, we know that the covalent characters present in the ionic compound, and that extent of polarizations, up to what extent the polarization is taking place in any ionic compound, is known by certain set of rules. Those rules are called Fajan's rule, and this Fajan rule, it depends upon four important factors: the size of the cation, charge on anion, and size of anion, and also the electronic configuration of the cation. So in the next video, we will broadly discuss about this Fajan rule and also solve problems related to Fajan's rule. That's all for today. Thank you.